Okay, we're back for another episode of Building the Box podcast. It's been an eventful week, kind of short because I was away in Venice for the Monday and then I missed the first half Tuesday. So I feel like a lot's been condensed into the Wednesday and the Thursday this week, but it's been good. Venice was actually a great trip. It was my birthday and my partner's birthday, so it was fun to do that. But we went to the Venezia game. That was on my birthday and it was a really cool experience. Venezia, if you don't know in the football world, are kind of like a hipster football club. Traditionally, they shoot pretty cool promotional campaigns and they're always cool jerseys. They've had Kappa and Nike in previous years. This year they have Nocta by Drake, who makes their kits, and so I managed to pick up two. Now they're expensive jerseys. They were €100 each, which I thought was a quite expensive, but they're cool looking jerseys. Like, they are nice looking. It was an interesting experience just from a retail perspective, and also like going to the game was cool. Like, you have to cross the bridge and like you can only get boat taxis to the game, so it's unlike any other experience you would have going to a football match, and like you can sit and drink in the stands, which you can't do in the UK. £5 beer, and the only beer they have is Peroni poured, so pretty cool. But the retail experience was interesting. It was like almost like going into like a vintage store. When you went into the Venezia store, it was unpolished floors with carpets put down, like old Italian, I would imagine, carpets, but like Moroccan carpet or rugs maybe is the better term there, and like bare exposed walls. It was pretty cool. They were just mainly focusing on selling the jersey, which is interesting. They didn't have like tons of other stuff, like cups and pens and the usual crap you would see in a club store, but it seemed to be doing quite well in trade. And the price point, I thought, which is really high for it, because they're a second division side, but clearly it's working for them and there's something to be said for that hipster model. Moving onwards, what's happened this week in work? We've put in a proposal for our first retail store. Arriving at like what we should propose as being tricky enough, I've had to speak to our estate agent. So basically we did a process where I got actually intro to them from a friend, from a guy who messaged my LinkedIn, Craig. He was like, check out these estate agents. I tried to message a few of them, and then it ended up I actually knew one of them because he did the job for this. Now he's moved out, set up his own practice. We've been using him to search for retail. Incidentally, this one was actually someone who came to me, offered me the place, but he was able to help us write the offer, because there's a lot of stuff in that you don't really know, and you only pay if you really win when a estate agent writes your offer. So you pay them like a percentage of what they negotiate. Now I'm aware that is kind of like, if they're paid a percentage of what they negotiate, then they're encouraged to negotiate higher fees. But from what I've seen, the offer seems like they're trying with our best interests at heart, so it's going well. We'll hope to hear back. We've had a few other things like claw machine places, so we've had 3 agreements this week, which is really exciting. One in the US, and it kind of makes me think we should speed run the US, like I touched on last week, with the ads and stuff like that. That's in mind, and that's something I'll debate over when Ross joins. I believe he joins either next week or the week after, probably the week after, I think it is. So that will be good to talk to him about, because the interest in it is crazy, and we've kind of built out the onboarding process, which has been really cool. And now we're the first 5 machines, so we've ordered 55 or 54. First 5 have arrived import, and then the next 49 will be finished by the end of this month and shit on their way. So it's kind of all go there, and some of the offers we've been getting on it have been pretty cool. I don't want to disclose the one right now, but the one in America is really big. We've basically had the offer through. Once we sign it and get ahead of the partnership, it will be huge for brand awareness, especially coming into the World Cup. With the new hires coming on, so we had Scott started this week, who's focusing on retention. We have been doing every 2 days. How I've been working is every day, normally I would check in with them 15-30 minutes, talking through what they've been working on, how it's been going, and trying to answer questions. As they've become more accustomed to how they're doing, where they are, I'm speaking to them every 2 days for the same 30 minutes. And I don't know if there's a definitive time period when you need to taper that off. I guess you would naturally feel that when you think you don't need to speak to them anymore. I think ClickUp is great for this. So when people come on board, I've built out a standardized template that they have to work through. So it's stuff like ClickUp basics, learning more about the company, working with certain people, and so they get all this awareness about certain things, so they can go through ClickUp and complete these tasks. So you can see it, I can see it as an oversight where they are, and then for each person, if they're working on something individual, then I'll build out what they need to start learning or focusing on, and then we'll build out their long 6-month goals once they've got the basics down, and then it's just a continual conversation. So ClickUp's been really good for that, and I'm excited because we've kind of railroaded it down people's throats now. Like, we've made everyone do the basic, the expert, and the AI courses. And before, I had to be the one who really pushed ClickUp onto people. And now we're really seeing the benefits of people doing ClickUp themselves. So some of the stuff, the projects and the sprints and even the forms that we're building inside of it are really, really good. And I think we're getting more use out of the platform. Now we need to double check on our bill because I think we're getting charged quite excessively on AI usage. But overall, pretty good. I think that's one thing that can be a game changer. So ClickUp has so many possibilities, just like any other project management software like Sana and Monday, except I think it has way more capabilities. I think if you can manage to get your team onboarded onto it, it will be huge. I'm excited to see where it goes. We're only at the start of this journey. You know, it's only been a month since I forced it down people's throats, so I'm sure as we continue to go along, we'll keep learning and learning more. I touched on this last week about how I'm like scared about opportunities popping up and it distracting us, but this week I've managed to carve out time for where my real focus is and the paid ads. I kind of thought we were getting behind on that, but now we aren't really. We've had some unfortunate things go against us this month, so like we've been completely out of stock on rugby, and that should land again next week. And that will allow us to restock, get the ads live for rugby, and we'll start pumping volume again. So we're trailing slightly under our forecast because we haven't had the ability to spend on rugby, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. We're hoping to try and avoid stockouts going forward this year. It is a potential worry though, because historically we always just kept everything in stock so we could meet revenue forecasts. But now we've started nailing in customer. We've decided to mark stuff out of stock when it is out of stock, rather than have 3, 5, 7 day fulfillment times when we're waiting for restock and selling that out of stock. It's a trade-off, but I think it's a trade-off worth making. Revenue is vanity at certain points, and we're building this for really the long term, so I don't want to torch any customers whatsoever. I want everyone to be in love with the product. I also had a meeting yesterday, an Ecom live meeting. There were like 10 of us in the room, and it was pretty good. There's some real good insights you can come away with from just meeting people up like that. And I'm a big fan of Ecom Live from Ireland. I think it wasn't structured great to like bring out as much interesting stuff as possible, because I think it was a lot of like talking about issues that really are unsolvable, like postman issues, like no one can solve that. So why are we talking about this for 15 minutes is my kind of thoughts on that. But it was a good convo. The only one thing I would touch on that like scares me in these things is that I'm the youngest in the room probably by 15-20 years, and I think e-commerce founders, at least the most innovative ones, always seem to be younger and pressing, and I think you need a mix of the age gap. And I remember this from Coca-Cola when I went to listen to their ex-head of product came up with Coke Zero. He said you need to always listen to the youngest person in the room. So I think just more young voices in that setup. And like I go to tons of these trade events. American ones are a bit different, but especially in the UK, there is a lot of like 40s and up, and there's nothing wrong with that, don't get me wrong. They have 20 years experience, they know way more than I do in terms of business. But I think at the cutting edge of ecom, when you're talking like about paid ads and stuff like that, or you're talking about especially marketing, I think marketing is the real one here. I think 20-year-olds, young early 30s, are always at like the edge of the game. They're always on like the latest trends. So I wish there was greater, I don't think it's Ecom Live's point, but I feel like that younger people need greater voices. Again, I have a pretty good one because I do the YouTube, I do the LinkedIn. But next week I'm having a visit to Gymshark, which will be really, really good. That'll be interesting. So it's like just a learning tour. So I think you go through every department and then someone will be explaining like what they work on there at each department. I mean, it's almost like a museum tour. So I don't know how many things you can take away and apply, but it's definitely, it'll be intellectually stimulating. Like how much can you apply from a company that's like, I don't know how much revenue they do nowadays, 600 million, or is it less? How much are you going to apply to our company? But I'm excited. I'm going to go in with an open mind. We also had a major UK supplier finally get back to us, which is interesting. So I've got a call next Friday with them, and I'll be talking through what maybe a long-term partnership could do with. Now, we don't really need the partner as much as it'd be nice to have them on board, but it opens up another opportunity. Like we're constantly getting different suppliers coming to us now, which is a good place to be at. I want to finish up with, I was reading Naval this week. This is just a personal book I'm reading. It's not even in our book club. Naval Ravikant. It's not actually written by him. It's written by someone who has basically took all his podcasts and tweets and put them together in a book. And it explained this thing, and it was like, the more knowledge you accumulate, the more wealth you accumulate, because if you have knowledge, people with wealth will come to you to help you make wealth, make them wealth, and then you gain wealth, and it's like a self-fulfilling thing. Basically, he was saying they're interlinked. Now, he says a lot of other things like, you know, you need to be public facing, you need to build credibility, but basically the two of them are really tied in his eyes. I can see that a lot, and it's something I want to double down on more this year. So we've already got the book clubs, we do training courses, but on a personal level, I think I want to get back to consuming more YouTube and consuming more Twitter and LinkedIn in structured mechanisms, you know, in a way that is educational rather than is dopamine fulfilling. So whether that's half an hour each week of, okay, now we scroll Twitter and we look for stuff that's really educational. Now we watch YouTube for an hour and see what's educational. I think it's largely true. It hit home to me because when I embarked on this educational piece, certainly internally in the second half of last year, the growth of the company has been huge since. That's us wrapping up for another week, and I'll be back next week. I'll be filming before the Gymshark visit, but I'll be discussing everything that's happened in the gym.